Hi everyone, I'm Natasha Stott, Despoja, and I thank you for the opportunity to commemorate World Humanitarian Day 2023 with you and ActionAid. I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we gather. I live on the land of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and to any elders from other communities who may be watching today. I also acknowledge the wonderful ActionAid team, our wonderful MC, Tracy Spicer, and of course other panellists and speakers. August 19 every year is an opportunity to salute those and acknowledge the work of those who risk their lives to save others in humanitarian crises. It's also an opportunity to rally support for those who are currently living in crisis-affected communities. We know that women make up a large number of those who risk their lives, and they're often the first to report to a crisis and often the last to leave. Their efforts are required more than ever as we seek to strengthen the international response. We know that governments and non-state actors must ensure that humanitarians are protected, that they're afforded their rights due to them under international law. Unfortunately, World Humanitarian Day this year takes place against many rising humanitarian crises, whether that's drought in the Horn of Africa or earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, cyclones and disasters in the Pacific, or indeed ongoing conflict in places like Afghanistan, in Syria, or indeed the Ukraine, where we've seen millions of children and women flee. Of course, ActionAid has a very specific and unique role and emphasis. At the heart of the work that ActionAid does, the core element is recognising the critical role of women and women's leadership. I've been fortunate to see this firsthand, whether it was as Ambassador for Women and Girls, attending the International Humanitarian Summit in Turkey, whether it's visiting Bangladesh with ActionAid teams, or indeed looking at crisis response and cyclone response in Vanuatu. I know that ActionAid is a feminist-focused organisation operating in around 45 countries now around the globe. It recognises that a core element of our humanitarian response must be women's leadership, because conflict and disasters impact women and girls disproportionately. As we tackle these growing humanitarian crises, it's clear that preparing communities must go hand in hand with achieving gender equality. We know that women and girls are disproportionately affected when it comes to conflict, disasters, and health emergencies. We know that violence against women and girls increases in crisis, or women's unpaid work increases, especially if they need to go further to get food and water. We know the pandemic and climate change are exacerbating these inequalities as well, not just in Australia, but around the world. The pandemic certainly made inequalities worse for those already marginalised, those with disabilities, those from poor backgrounds, but women and girls especially. And at the UN, I know it's going to take around 300 years to achieve global gender equality. But despite these depressing scenarios and these desperate backdrops, there are things that we can do, powerful things, to shift the dial. At the heart of ActionAid's Arise Fund is a simple concept. If we can ensure that women from affected communities are prepared before disaster strikes, they can not only play a powerful role as first responders, but their visible leadership at the helm of the response can change attitudes, change positions, change aspirations. It can shift gender norms that have excluded women from decision-making and leadership, including in humanitarian response, for decades. This is the core of ActionAid's work. And I've seen it, for example, in Bangladesh, where women have gone from literally praying when disaster strikes to leading the response, leading early warnings, ensuring evacuations of older people and children, lobbying the government to establish shelters in which they store important documents and food and water. And the communities have taken notice. They're aware of women's visible leadership and the capabilities they bring to the humanitarian response. So today is an opportunity to acknowledge that leadership, to recognise the often unsung heroes of humanitarian crises, women's leadership that's so often undervalued, unrewarded and unpaid, and yet makes such a significant contribution to saving and protecting lives, as well as strengthening the international humanitarian response. I'm very proud to be associated with a feminist-focused organisation like ActionAid, which not only protects and changes lives, but can actually strengthen communities and help achieve gender equality, social justice, and poverty eradication. All power to you. Thank you.